and welcome back. This is episode 19 of CNY Conversations. I'm Jason Klink, your host, and today I am with Jay Riordan. And Jay is a fellow real estate agent and most currently a Democratic candidate for the Cicero Town Board and running for election this year. It's not re-election, right, Jay?
No. This is my first foray into politics, and it will be my last.
Oh.
One and done, one shot. So
one and done.
Yep. Yeah. So I really didn't want to be in politics. It was just that we started having some discussions about what was happening in Cicero, especially in light of the huge changes that are coming. We'll talk more about that in a second. But just having social media discussions, I was told in the springtime I should, run for town council. And the sort of opportunity is there for this year. And the reason for that is because of the big changes that are coming the way of Cicero, and the fact that not a lot of the town seems to be overall unaware of the magnitude of the changes that are coming. And now is the chance for people who are residents of Cicero to have their voice heard about how they want this to go in the future, because there's a lot of issues that will have consequences down the road. Just starting next year, construction starts next year on the Micron project, but there's going to be so many people coming into the area. The traffic patterns are going to change. Where people are living is going to change. Some of the things that government might want to do to increase the housing stock, seeing now the problem ahead, are things that should be on the table. And so I was, I really tried to avoid running. At first I said no. Then I got involved with the campaigns of some people who are actually running. And that was interesting, but they weren't. There's one guy in particular who I think is a really good town board member. He's a Republican, and technically I'm running against him, but we get along great.
That's awesome.
And I'm really trying to bring a nonpartisan approach to what's going on in the town of Cicero in light of these big changes. But I really tried to avoid running. I tried to run my cat as a joke, and kitty for town board, and that didn't resonate too well. So when the cat failed, that's where I came in. And
well, it's interesting because, you obviously grew up in Central New York and spent most of your life here, and I have as well. And the town of Cicero to me has grown so much in the last couple of decades. And it's funny you mentioned the traffic pattern, because I always considered the Route 31 corridor or Route 11 just a nightmare. It's almost as bad as 5 and 92, where that comes into Fayetteville and Manly, is how bad that is. And I can only imagine, if there's the influx of people that they think is going to come to that area, that north part of the county, how much either that corridor is going to need to change, or there's going to need to be plans for some type of other corridor in that area in order to facilitate the amount of traffic that could end up going through there.
Yeah, and that corridor is a really good example of how the future aspects of this community are being determined right now. Okay. Because I can imagine people 5, 10, 15 years down the road getting off on 81 and trying to head towards Clay on 31 at the Cicero exit. And 5, 10, 15 years from now, they're going to be complaining that, this road was horribly designed. This makes no sense. We don't have enough lanes. And similar with 11 that goes in the other direction, which is actually Brewerton Road. We don't have enough lanes. We don't have enough turn signals. We don't have access to business. Well, it's going to be really difficult to make the case for those things 5 or 10 years down the road, and those things are a done deal.
Right.
And those aspects of the roadway changes are literally set in stone.
Right.
It's now that folks who want to have a voice in this do need to get involved, and it's tricky. It's tricky. I think that one of the biggest hesitations that people have here is just that they've seen it in the news before. Okay, it's almost like the boy who cried wolf situation. I remember I grew up in Utica in the 1980s. I'm 49 years old now.
I'm right there with you.
Okay. I see. We're both dealing with our hairlines and our own ways.
I shaved my head many years ago just to avoid the hairline and the gray hair.
Yeah. And I'm working on it. I was very surprised that one day my head is mostly brown, but it was like overnight. My goatee and beard just switched to gray, just like overnight. It was very disappointing. But the residents here, and there was a similar thing going on in Utica too. I grew up here in the 80s, starting in the 90s, when those base closings happened at the end of the Cold War. For instance, Griffiths Air Force Base got closed. The Plattsburgh base got closed. That was a time of substantial change too.
For sure.
And at that time, they started promoting the idea of having some high-tech businesses, either in Utica or here in Onondaga County. Both Oneida County and Onondaga County have very good industrial development agencies, and they've really stepped up to the plate lately to put together some really impressive projects, and to do it in a way that hasn't really made anybody terribly upset. And I can tell you more about some of the homes that have been bought up around here, particularly on Burnett Avenue. I did a video there.
I saw that.
Yeah. And man, that is a strange sight to see. But some of the numbers now, everything on Burnett Avenue is in contract now. So I've heard from agents who are involved. So the remaining families will be moving out, and that is a ghost street. It's one of the oddest drives you can drive down.
And, I believe it. And my in-laws live in Cicero. My wife grew up in Cicero, and they have friends that lived on Burnett Ave.
Okay.
And were part of the whole process that happened there. And they lived in a family home that had been in their family for generations, and they held out because it was the sentimental value to that home more than the money they were being offered. But unfortunately, it got to the point where it was time to take an offer or battle with the government. So I've heard firsthand of what's happened on Burnett Road and how much it's turned into a ghost town.
Yeah. And I think that OCEDA, in their dealings with the homeowners there, the remaining homeowners, were, from what I've heard, more than fair. So, we can't really criticize OCEDA. I think they've done a great job just setting up this whole project. But just to get back to an earlier point, I think that one of the crucial reasons why I'm involved in politics for this time is because a good portion of the Cicero population is in denial that this is coming, and the scale of it. Because they've heard it all before. They've heard it for 30 years. And even when they see news articles in Syracuse.com or on WSYR or CNY Central, wherever, with the latest on the Micron project and its scale, and the state politicians, even the national politicians that are backing this up, still it's sort of kind of like, oh yeah, here's another tech business. I think I heard something like this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I'm not going to take this one seriously. But what we've seen really since the beginning of this year, and really more so in the last 6 months, is the property transactions that have really changed
dramatically.
Dramatically. They've
Yep.
changed the situation here. And when you see the doggedness with which OCEDA pursued these remaining properties, and there's other stuff that professionally I can't disclose for privacy reasons.
Sure.
But I see it in those dealings too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're really, really aggressively pursuing these remaining properties, putting them into place with a determination that you don't see from an industrial development agency unless that industrial development agency understands that this is a done deal. So when you put the pieces together, you really see what the changes have been over the last 6 months. I mean, the impetus that from the original announcement, which came out around this time last year, I think it might have been a month or so later. That had all the politicians behind it, Governor Hochul, even Biden. And there's a reason why there's so many layers of government that are invested in this, regardless of the price tag. And that's the national security issues. It's the onshoring of production. That's the issue with the fact that the world's largest semiconductor manufacturer is TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. And America, the United States, does not have full faith that they'll be able to deal with or rely on a company in Taiwan like they could with an American company. And this is important for national defense issues. It's important for global strategy. There are 3 things that the government identified as being technology that we really have to press. And they were artificial intelligence, quantum computing, which is sort of more of a superconductivity problem, because you can only do that. Quantum computing right now, temperature is very close to absolute zero.
Right.
And the third one was semiconductor manufacturing, which is, as you probably know, not a simple thing.
Right.
The machines that are used in this manufacturing are made by one company in the Netherlands. They're incredibly expensive. They're going to have that company in the Netherlands going to have a substantial staff on site just to support their machines for Micron. But these real estate transactions that have taken place, the solidification of the properties with such vigor, and it's been some investors who've been doing the same thing. I mean, there's been some smart folks who bought some land for nearby apartment complexes or other uses, and you've seen a pickup in that too over the last 6 months. So my message is very clear. I mean, Micron's coming. It's going to be a huge thing. Just to give you a number that really, I think, drives it home, Micron is going to result in 45,000 new employees, workers around here at full scale. Okay. And that's with all 4 fabs running. 9,000 will be direct Micron employees. The other 36,000 be supply chain affiliated companies, supporting companies. Well,
let me ask you this though, because with this plan, it's supposedly a 7 to 10 year plan. They have to build all this infrastructure. They have to be able to complete all phases of the project, and we've seen projects before. And I'll be kind of I'll say the voice of reason, but I'll play devil's advocate actually. So, I think back to like Destiny Mall and Conjul and his crew at Pyramid. they are not pyramid, but Conjal and his crew, you know, for lack of better terms, suckered the city and the county into all these tax breaks, and they were going to build this huge conglomerate entertainment center in the mall and hotels and all of this stuff. They were only obligated to build the first phase. That's all they did, and that was the end of the project. They also promised the town of Salina that they were going to build this technology park on 7 North Street next to the dump, cleared out all the land. It was going to connect the technology park to whatever they were going to build over by the mall, and they cleared out the land, and it never happened. I personally, and I'm sure a lot of taxpayers, don't put a lot of faith in what the politicians say. No offense. But
No, taken. I agree with you.
So, you know, they can do all the song and dance that they want, but to me, until they start driving pylons in the ground and these buildings start getting built and they have the infrastructure there, all it is just planning.
It is, but it's planning for the future of a company that's risking its entire $70 billion market cap, which changes the scale considerably. You know,
That's true.
Destiny did not have anywhere near the wide-ranging implications that the Micron project has, and their implications in a different way. Destiny is a customer service business, a retail establishment.
Right.
They tried to make it into a destination, didn't do that well with doing that. So it's a very large shopping mall. Okay, that's not something that is so ingrained into the future of our country and our technology like Micron is. You know, again, these 3 things, the quantum computing, the artificial intelligence, the semiconductor manufacturing, these are going to be the things that sort of define the technology that we're going to use in the future. At all levels, you know, me and you on our cell phones or on our computers here, but also the national security folks, the Department of Defense. You know, they're going to be using these same technologies, and that really changes the game. The analogy that I would like to use is, and I don't know if I like the analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. After World War II, the Cold War started, and it took a few years for it to ramp up. And then after that, it took a year or two for America to catch on and say, oh, wow, you know, our investment is nowhere near done. This is going to be a big thing that's going to probably happen for decades. So we got to sink a lot of effort, money, funds into this, into preparing our national defense in the 1950s, because we can see what's coming. And I think that America is making a decision that is similar to that in a lot of ways now. You know, you're embracing these technologies that are essential for the future because the government is a little bit justifiably, in some cases, concerned about what will happen if these technologies remain in overseas hands, but also because they see that it's so important for everything from national defense to our phones. It's important for our society that these technologies are, that there is no disruption in these technologies. And that's where Micron comes into play. But you do have to realize that it is a $70 billion market cap company. Okay.
Right.
The folks who built Destiny USA are not, you know, betting $70 billion on that project. After the cost overruns, it might come close.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So here's one of the other things I was thinking about too, just about Cicero in general is, you know, kind of going back to what I said, Cicero has grown and expanded so much, and it went from this sleepy little residential community to, I mean, Route 11's got, you know, a ton of business and commercial. And, you know, then then I think about the high school, and I graduated from CNS. My kids graduated from CNS. You know, my daughter's class was just over 700 students, I believe. My son's class was just over 800 students. So they're very overpopulated. Like today, I truly believe that the North Syracuse School District could have 2 high schools again because of the amount of students that they have. So now you're talking about all of this influx of people, 45,000 employees one way or another. You know, I can see where the planning needs to start now, the 5 and 10-year plan, to be able to absorb, not only from Cicero, but to Clay, probably to Baldwinsville, and maybe over to Madison County and north and south from there, of how our communities are exactly going to absorb and prepare and expand and have that ability to expand and contract based on how this project goes.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right about that. And this is why people need to make their voices heard now.
Right.
Because in a few years, all that's going to be at least planned. It's going to be underway, and it's going to be too late.
Right.
And like when you're so just to correct you, I have been a realtor in the past. For the last few years, I've been doing new home builds with American Homes, going back to the realtor business after the election, and opening up a brokerage here and hopefully on the Micron side, or right next door. But the thing that I want to just sort of express to you is that when you look at plans for a community, they're not dissimilar from new home plans in the way that if you see them on paper, if you see what's planned, if you pay attention to it and you read through the details, by finding things that don't work for you in those new home plans, you can make a change very easily. It's just on a piece of paper. You cross something off, you put something else in, right? The engineers change the plans and the house is changed accordingly. But once construction gets underway, then you're talking about a change order, and oftentimes it's too late, or it's infeasible, or it's too expensive. And so the earlier you can look at what's going to happen, and you can understand or try to understand or have somebody communicate to you the essence of the information that's out there, the long documents, the diagrams, these things, then you can participate. Then you can help refine how those things are going to be implemented, because now is the time to do it. You using the new home analogy, you wait too long to change your fireplace that you want in your living room, and suddenly the fireplace has a part that's on back order for 2 years.
Right.
And you're disappointed and you don't get what you want. But if you had been involved a little bit earlier, you probably would. Just to put that 45,000 number into perspective, that's 45,000 workers. Now they're all not going to be living in Cicero and Clay. They'll be spread out. But 45,000 workers. Okay. Cicero right now has a population, a total residential population, including non-workers, kids, elderly, everything else, of just under 32,000. 32,000. So we've got 45,000 people moving into the area because of this project. Cicero's got a population right now of 32,000, including non-workers. Okay. But here's the catch. The Micron project is technically located in Clay, but it's literally just across the Cicero border. I mean,
100%.
Yeah, that Burnett Road is it's like a few hundred feet to the Cicero border, and that now is going to be an essential part for some of the spinoff companies to locate on that overall Micron White Pine site. But you think about, well, where are these guys going to go out to lunch, right? Yep. 45,000 people in that area. Where are they going to go to? They're going to go to Cicero because it's right there. It takes half the time to get to Cicero's entire commercial strip than it does to get to Clay's.
Right.
And so when you think about where people are going to go out to lunch, and also sort of kind of indicates where they might want to live, because those same neighborhoods are going to be the neighborhoods that are most convenient to that work site. And so out of those 45,000, how new workers, how many, as a guess, do you think that Cicero should expect to absorb? 10,000 of the 45 as residents? 15,000?
That's probably pretty accurate.
15. Okay, so let's say 15,000 new workers moving into a community that only has 32,000 residents right now total.
Right.
It's 15,000 workers, and then you add their family members, then you add their kids, then you add whoever they're bringing along, and you're probably up to 20 to 25,000 total new residents. Let's call it 22. Okay, 22,000 new residents moving into an area that has a population now of 35,000. So everything has to be re-examined ahead of time. And this relates to your school issue too, because those, and I do agree with you that CNS High School is it's so large, that it's perhaps causing problems with kids being able to just sort of, it's intimidating for kids is what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah.
Just cutting that down and having a second school would be great. But this has to be discussed now, or at least soon, because once these people once these Micron folks start coming, it's just the problems are going to get more and more urgent. And if we take a proactive approach, and it's not about this election necessarily, we're still going to be around with the campaign even after the election, just to make sure that Cicero's, whether we win or lose, we'll make sure that Cicero's eyes are on the ball and that they're focused on these changes that are coming. Again, you have to keep in mind that, again, there's a good portion of the Cicero public that is just doesn't think it's going to happen. And you yourself made some comments that are sort of in that direction, that you're not really going to believe this until there's pylons in the ground.
Yep.
But I think what we can see from the last 6 months is just looking at the real estate activity, that there's a heck of a lot more people who believe that this is a done deal that's going to happen now than there were 6 months ago.
And don't get me wrong, like I'm all for growth in a community. I'm all for anything that provides a financial boost to a community. It's not one of those things where it should be shunned away just because it's so large and so massive. Because I think any big commercial industrial development should be embraced simply based on the influx of money in tax dollars and in hospitality, entertainment, everything that goes along with it. It only makes the community better. And I am cautiously optimistic that the different governments and the different planning boards are able to put together a long-term plan that is able to, because not only the schools, but like just in Cicero, you have a volunteer fire department that is struggling for personnel like every other volunteer fire department in Onondaga County. You have a small police force. You have the current supply chains like Wegmans and Price Chopper and Target and Walmart. But now, who's to say there doesn't need to be an attraction to like Costco or BJ's to be plopped in Cicero and Clay to be able to support that supply chain. So there's just, it's so big and so massive, and there's so many unknowns that it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out.
Well, I think it is, but I'd urge you to keep a couple things in mind, Jason. That's that, we're in the Rust Belt here. Let's not forget that.
Yep.
A couple decades ago, there was a huge thing about as the well-known Syracuse area employers would either downsize or close entirely. All
Yep.
those manufacturing jobs disappeared,
Yep.
and we had a problem with that as a community. We didn't like that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Now we have one of the most essential manufacturing businesses, not only in what they produce, but in the type of corporation that they are, with such a
Mm-hmm.
high market cap, reflecting the national security issues. That this is the manufacturing of the mid 2020s.
Yeah.
This is what manufacturing is in
Yep.
2024 and 2025, and so on, and what it's going to be for the foreseeable few years. So, is there, you know, Carrier's never going to have the staff that they once had here,
Right.
and all the other ones that closed. If you want manufacturing, then this is the manufacturing that you can get. And it's different. They're going to
Yeah.
use, I mean, 48 million gallons of water a day.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Requires another pipeline down from Oswego. Eventually, they're going to use the electrical equivalent when everything's built out of 1.5 million households.
Yeah.
But that's the cost of having a modern manufacturing, a huge modern manufacturing facility to replace the ones that we lost over the preceding decades. And to have that in Rust Belt, upstate New York is pretty good. Now, it
Yeah.
makes sense why they located it here, because we have that water supply. We can actually do that. We can handle the wastewater that will come out of it. That's 8 to 20 million gallons a day. And we hope that the state's plans for their electrical grid will be nice, robust, so we can all get some electrical vehicles and some mini splits to condition our homes. But we do need that piece to come together. I think that one thing that's really important is just that the partisanship, the parties. This is nothing to do with me. Yes, I'm running as a Democrat because they would let me on their line. Okay. The Cicero is generally a Republican town,
Yep.
and by the time when I started to see these developments from Micron, and I started to get involved in politics about 6 months ago, they had already selected their candidate even before the primary for their nomination. So, Cicero is generally regarded as a Republican town, and they're nice Republicans, but there's a little bit of a systemic problem that has just sort of grown up here, in that, well, they're all sort of cut from the same cloth, and there's not really anybody, for having that slightly outside perspective to double check things, to make sure that the other folks have their eye on the target, to focus on what's important, and just to clear up some communication when that communication has to be cleared up. There's none of that, and that's what I hope to add to the town board. I'd love to give you a little example of that if you'd like, Jason.
Well, unfortunately, we've run to the end of our time here.
Okay.
But I'd love to schedule a part 2 at some point. This is all great points and all great things to talk about, and I think the community needs to know it. But I definitely would like to do a part 2 and bring you back, especially as we get closer to the election, and kind of
Sounds
see
good.
if how things have changed.
Yeah. I think that would be great. I appreciate you inviting me on, and thank you very much for the discussion.
Awesome. Hey guys, if you want to connect with Jay, he does have his own website at jayforcicero.com. Go on his website, check out his platform, see on the points that he's running on. Please like and comment, drop some comments on the video. If you're listening on the audio later, please share it with anyone that you might feel would get any value out of it, because that's the only way I'm going to grow this really small community around my podcast. So with that, Jay, thank you again.
Thank you, Jason.
And everybody else, we'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a great day.